Hello everyone. Today I'll be watching another video by the same Christian creator, Brian Holsworth, which is called The Hidden Beliefs of Powerful Monsters. I guess it's about Jeffrey Epstein. Um, so I'm curious what he's going to say. Let's start, I guess.
Well, as more documentation is released and more news about who Jeffrey Epstein was and what he was up to is disclosed, there seems to be two kinds of reactions among the general public. There are people who are sleuthing over all the files in the database and are getting red pilled or black pilled or some kind of pilled as they pore over the details. And then there are just people who are carrying on without a care in the world, as if the people who run our society, from tech billionaires like Bill Gates to billionaire political lobbyists like Lex Wexner, to academics and intellectuals like Noam Chomsky, to people in intelligence and law enforcement, to the royal family, all the way up to the heads of states of the most powerful countries in the world, were implicated in some horrifically evil stuff while palling around with Epstein. I think some people are willfully ignoring those possibilities because if it's true that our ruling class are capable of being as evil as it all implies, then how can we have any trust in our institutions or
Yeah, okay. And there is also third group of people like Robbie Swami or I think it's what's Matt Tracy, who are saying it's basically like a nothing burger. So that nothing has been really proven yet. And I mean, it's fair that so far it's kind of more like a speculations. So yeah, I want to see more files released. Want to see more names unredacted. See who are the co-conspirators, and what are the crimes they implicated in, and who was the actual victims. However, probably we're not gonna know this. Yeah, I want to see how dark it actually was. Where is this children sacrifice and all the stories? Is it true? Cannibalism accusations, but okay, that's another question. It's probably something bad, so well, let's see what he's gonna say about it.
or government anymore. So they'd rather just plug themselves back into the matrix and act like it doesn't exist. Take this one example, this email screenshot that went viral after one of the recent disclosures. It's an email to Epstein from a redacted person. It says, "Thanks for the fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty."
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this email. It's not clear what does it mean. Well, it could be some prostitute. She doesn't even have to be underage. Like, if she's underage, how much underage she is, I don't know. So yeah, of course, it's look kind of suspicious, but that's not a proof of anything yet.
Now, the question everyone should be asking is, aside from how can someone be such a monster, is why is that redacted? Why are we protecting that person? That person does not deserve a private life or even freedom. They deserve to be exposed.
Yeah, by the way, according to the congressional decision, the only reason to redact a name in the release of the file can only be due to safetyness of the victim or due to national security concern. So, and again, if it's not the name of the victim, that supposedly should be national security concern, but it's most likely bogus. So yeah, I mean, I think this name should be redacted.
For the monster that they are and then imprisoned. And yet someone decided it was better to protect their identity. Whoever redacted that email knows who sent it. And the only reason I can think of for why they redacted it is because it's a very important person. The kind of person that if the general public knew who it was, we might have a political or economic crisis on our hands, the kind that could mean serious societal instability.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly how they, justify it as a national security concern in the heads. Yeah.
And so they protect that person.
Right.
And the point in all of this that I at least want to address is people asking the question, how is it possible that our leaders are so evil? How is that possible? Because if I'm being honest, that question didn't really occur to me. I wasn't really surprised by those revelations. I might have been surprised that they were making their way to the public, But mostly, I'm just over here thinking, yeah, that lines up pretty consistently with what I would have expected. So why is that? Why am I not surprised? And here I think we have to do a little work. We have to brace ourselves for some effort. But understand that if you can appreciate the significance of what I want to convey in this video, it might just be the thing that saves your soul from becoming the kind of person who is capable of the kind of offenses that occurred in the company of someone like Jeffrey Epstein. So the first thing to understand is that we live in the modern world. That's obvious enough. We're not really breaking any new ground there. But what that means is that our lives are shaped by the philosophical movements that dominate this era of history. And I don't think people appreciate.
Yeah, it's correct. By the way, it's a interesting kind of deep thought that yeah, the philosophy plays a role in your life even if you're not noticing it. That's kind of the message, I mean, he's trying to convey.
That enough. The more you learn about the history of philosophy, the more you discover that these eccentric, antisocial academics and philosophers are actually the ones shaping our society and therefore our social life and defining how.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I myself, I haven't thought about it that much as well before I came to America. Like, in Russia, just like hard to see because these impacts were dealt like a long time ago, and there's almost like nothing left except for like already dysfunctional collapsed society, so to say, um, where ideas are just not taken seriously anymore. Everybody is cynical about them. So yeah, in US it's totally different, and yeah, you see it's the evolution of ideas is alive here, and yeah, indeed he points out that this is intellectual elites which are kind of responsible for the decay we're seeing, in our everyday lives in the streets.
How it is that the rest of us live. And the thing to understand about modernism and the modern age is that it divided itself into one of two options, either rationalism or empiricism. Rationalism is the belief that only what happens inside your mind can be known. So if truth is something you seek after, it can't be known through something external to you or your mind. And so you as the subject become the sole focus of interest as opposed to the objects and even other people which are external to you. Then empiricism is the belief that only what can be measured and observed through our senses can be known. And this is where we get more aggressive forms of scientism and materialist atheism. But the reason this is relevant is because if reality only occurs in your mind or only in what can be measured and observed by your senses, then the only experiences that become relevant to us as humans are sensations. Sensations as an alternative to deep, rational, abstract thought, or even emotions, both of which are much more durable than sensations.
I don't know. I don't think it follows like this. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I feel like I'm just not very well equipped to judge on his statements about the philosophical landscape of modern world. Like it seems kind of correct that indeed we only have some kind of decoupled from reality idealists, um, and more like um, how do you say this, analytic philosophers. They're kind of dominant in the mainstream academia. Uh, I don't know. I don't know how would I characterize myself. Yeah, but certainly, like I think I would more like I'm pretty much a usual materialist. Yeah, um, but I think what he's saying about materialism is just not necessarily true. Like, why he's saying that materialism implies that somehow sensations are more important in your lives than deep thoughts. Like, it's just not correct. It doesn't follow like this. I mean, sensations just kind of form the basis, they allow you to have this more deep thoughts. Everything you can think about is a result of non-trivial interaction between your sensations and the memories about previous sensations stored in your brain. Uh, well, in this complicated system, like which allows this, deep learning in some sense. Um, there is neural connections which were shaped based on previous sensations. Like you remember the taste of food or taste of apple. You could think whether apple grows and so on. You could think what you need, does it take to grow an apple. Like it doesn't, like taste just explains you why apple is important, right? Actually, not really. Yeah, you have to learn what you need food for, how your body functions, um, and so on. Like I don't see the any limits like this here. I think it's some sort of logical mistake, at least in this attack on materialism. There might be, more sophisticated attacks on materialism, but I don't think he brought them up here.
Thoughts can stay with us. We can explore them. We can contemplate them. We can allow them to evolve and take on a life of their own as they become more elaborate. Emotions can shape us and stir us and prolong certain experiences, but sensations are instant and momentary. There's nothing permanent about them. And a person whose only preoccupation is what happens in their own minds, or in other words, themselves, or a person who ignores any experience of their own humanity that doesn't occur to their senses and can be measured, is going to become someone who is habitually ignorant of the transcendentals of truth, goodness, and beauty. They won't show any interest in the bigger picture of the real world that they.
How it could be? I mean, like, every scientist literally is trying to, induce this global picture based on individual experiments, right? That's actually what we are always interested in. I guess it's just natural for our brain to generalize, to build concepts out of, elementary notions or perceptual concretes. I don't know why. I don't know how to call it correctly. So I don't know. I think he's building this gigantic case, I think out of nowhere. I don't know. There'll be probably different reason.
Habit and which surrounds them. They won't ask questions about how they should behave as an objective fact. They won't show any concern for beauty. That's something that is real and worthy of contemplation.
No, I seen that like people indeed like in maybe modern philosophers that they don't think about morality, for example, as objective, and that's more like the reason the reason for it is more like they went down this Kantian Hegelian path where they reject the I don't know, universality of reason, so to say, or that universality of truth, and this idea that well, they embrace this idea of there could be your truth and my truth, so nothing really matters, and that's led to the disinterest in thinking about morality objectively. Like for them, it's like not part of a reality, or it's not interesting because of that. I don't know. It's something like this. I don't think it's because of what he's saying. It's because people think materialistically. I don't think materialism is an obstacle. I'm not sure.
And frankly, that describes most people today. And the scary thing is, we're made for those things. And unless we encounter them, we become ravenous for any alternative that we can get our hands on. And I would say this does characterize most modern people living in the modernist age. Most of us show little to no interest in questions of metaphysics or ethics and how they might shape our own understanding of ourselves. Instead, all our concern is exclusively relegated to sensation. But again,
Well, actually, if you start thinking seriously about your life, like what your goals are and why you're trying to achieve them, you will inevitably have to answer some philosophical questions, no matter how strongly you try to push them aside. What happened to me is that I was just not calling them philosophical questions. I was not calling them ethic questions or questions of morality, but it's just, the guidance for my actions. And in fact, later I learned that that's the definition of morality, and it's pretty logical. What is morality? It's a guidance for your action. So, indeed, I tried to answer this question myself when I was younger. So I don't know how other people could deal with it. It's true that I noticed that most of the people kind of go with the flow. They just, they go to university because the parents tell them, or it's just kind of considered preferable on all these things that, well, if I get a degree, I get like, maybe better job and something like that. And he also, I think, mentions that they focus on sensations, um, but I don't know whether it's true. Like you're saying, people never think long term. Like, well, people think about material goods, and that's fine. That's normal. Like you want to have a good house where you could live and raise your family, and I don't know. Does he think that's sensation as well? It's I think it's there's no problem with that. Um, so yeah, I think it's normal that people even think in terms of, well, I want a big house, I want a good salary. How do I get it? Right? Standard line of thought.
The problem with sensation is that it has no stamina. You taste a sweet, and as quickly as the sensation occurs, it then disappears. So, what do you have to do? If you want to prolong the pleasurable experience at all, you have to repeat it, and repeat it, and repeat it, and repeat it. And the danger in repetition is that it turns into habit, and habit very easily turns into addiction. And so, in our desperation to prolong sensation, we find ourselves curating addictions to food, addictions to sex, addictions to entertainment, to social media, to drugs or alcohol. And addiction is incompatible with freedom of the will. So,
Well, yeah, I agree that addiction is a problem. It's like, yeah, you need to set up your own goals and be strong about them. And of course, addiction is a big trap. It's need to be avoided, and it's hard. Yeah, I agree, and I agree that technologies kind of make it easier uh, to get addicted.
we're weakening our will, which is needed to choose between right and wrong, and then strengthening our appetites, which don't care about right and wrong. And since we've given little to no attention to the question of what we ought to do, that transcendental of goodness, only what we want to do, our moral intuitions, let alone our reason, rarely intervene. The other effect of this obsession with sensation is that by overindulging in repetitious attempts to prolong pleasurable sensations, we also end up getting bored of the things that we pursue. The monotony of doing the same thing over and over again proves unsatisfying. So what do? We become obsessed with the new, the novel, and the exotic. That's why modern people who never truly contemplate beauty substitute it for the novel and even grotesque in things like our art. Art used to be about merit and beauty. Now it's just about the absurd. The stranger and more exotic it is, the more we pay it the attention it demands.
Well, yeah, I think his comments on art are maybe even on point. Yeah, because like I know the story how this kind of art which is depicted here first time emerged. It was, some painter who just he painted overall like a normal picture of a woman, and then I think he just painted some parts of her green, or I don't remember, parts of her body, something like this, and it created like a shock, like a people were like shocked, like what, why? And I mean they kind of get used to hyper realistic, high quality painting, and this was kind of just a provocative message which attracted attention, and then people start doing more with. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thought that people are fixated on sensations, and this create addiction, and then create the hunger for novelty. Yeah, I don't know. Mm, I'm just not sure that's what the root of the problem is. I don't know. That's this.
Expensive architecture today isn't based on what pleases a rational mind, but what disorients us with its strangeness.
Yeah, it's true. Mm, but the reason for it could be that, well, rational mind is no longer valued.
As soon as any of it becomes too familiar, we grow tired of it and we blow it up and tear it down. That's why buildings don't last anymore. Our ancestors constructed buildings that would last hundreds of years. We construct buildings that, if we're lucky, last a couple decades until we can't tolerate how out of fashion they are because
No, I don't think so. It's just practical. Well, it's like cheap materials. It costs less. It's well, more affordable. Like, it's not like people who live in these cathedrals, but it's just wrong. It's not just not an apple to apple comparison. Yeah.
The novelty has worn off. This is also why we're so hopelessly addicted to our phones and to doom scrolling. It starts with our fixation on sensation as the only experience that matters. It evolves into a frantic search for the new and the novel, and it ends in for-profit tech companies exploiting this weakness of ourselves by offering us the promise of both sensation and the new and unexplored just below the bevel of our screen. The same goes for moral
Yeah, and then people blame the companies for doing it, like if it's their fault.
values. From one decade to the next, we don't recognize ourselves as a society because we are restlessly chasing the newest values and the newest vernacular to express those values. Like, even if you could go back like 15 or 20 years, it would be impossible to talk to the average person about being woke or respecting someone's pronouns. They'd have no idea what that means, and they'd probably find it laughable if you tried to explain it to them. So we're desperately chasing after the novel.
Well, yeah, but he himself admitted in the beginning of the video that that's not like these pronouns didn't come out of nowhere. It's not by accident. There's certain neo-Marxist, cultural Marxist ideas behind it, which were pushed by intellectuals. So it's not like pronouns came just out of novelty.
We need a constant IV drip of sensations to keep us amused, and we spend no time asking or contemplating the deeper questions related to truth, goodness, or beauty, which means we're absent-minded and ill-prepared for when we face important moral choices, and we're more motivated by our fixation on sensations as the only important experience, the only thing that really matters. Now, that may seem harmless enough in your average middle-class working drone like me. Like, how much harm could I cause by being endlessly distracted by sensations and a lack of moral formation? And I'm also otherwise pretty distracted by necessity to have a job and maintain my income so I can pay the bills and care for my family. But what about the richest and most powerful people in the world? The entire menu of sensational experience is available to them, because all money does is multiply your ability to make choices. Choices that are unavailable to the rest of us are more than available to the rich and powerful.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, money gives you more choices.
Want to go spend time or a weekend on a tropical beach? Yeah, I do. But I'll have to be satisfied with one of those beach ambience videos on YouTube. But for your average billionaire, that's just a quick private plane ride away. A human being with no regard for objective morals or truth, characterized by boredom and conditioned by sensation alone, along with an obsession with the exotic, is an extremely dangerous recipe in the case of a powerful political figure or someone with more wealth than they could spend in an entire lifetime. And if it isn't obvious, maybe you're asking why. The reason is because the range of choices they are able to make is virtually unlimited. And so what's exotic to us is monotonous to them. They have to explore further and wider to experience something new. And with no objective moral discouragement, they'll easily drift into ranges that most decent people would find morally disturbing. Exotic religious experiences for us are a bore to them. Exotic sexual experiences, they got that out of their system when they were 25, by the time they were 25. Exotic food to us is airplane food to them. So if they're going to fend off boredom, they have to explore territories we can't even imagine. And when we do imagine it, we're shocked by it. And to make this point, I want to share a striking example of it that appears in John Sr.'s book, The Death of Christian Culture, where he diagnoses all of this in much greater and more convincing detail than I can in a 20-minute YouTube essay. So if you do want to understand this better, I'd suggest finding that book, if you can. It's hard to find. But he shares an anecdote of the thoroughly modernist novelist Gustave Flaubert and his traveling companion Maxime Duchamp, who were visiting the Middle East when that was still considered considered extremely exotic. And reading this is what reminded me so vividly of the Epstein saga as such a vivid portrayal of how the modernist mind and moral temperament can be so distracted by its fixations to utterly overlook the morally abhorrent context that they find themselves in. So the writer recounts they met, quote, they met two Arab boats conveying slaves to Cairo. They were mostly women and girls who had been stolen from the territory of Galas. The two travelers went aboard and stayed as long as they could, haggling over ostrich feathers and an Abyssinian girl. Their purpose, said Flaubert, was to enjoy the chic of the spectacle. So to them, a boat full of girls who were abducted and about to be sold into sex slavery in some foreign country wasn't a horror to be obstructed or interfered with at all costs, but rather an exotic, avant-garde experience to be relished for the thrill of the spectacle. And remember, Flaubert wasn't just a subject of modernism, he was one of its leading figures. He was an expert practitioner of its ideas. His famous novel, Madame Bovary, was a cautionary tale about what can happen when someone gets bored, writing, "For her life was as cold as an attic, with a window looking to the north, and ennui, like a spider, was silently spinning its shadowy web in every cranny of her heart." The warning here is don't let the cold attic of ennui or boredom take hold of your life. And the only way to defend against it is with a constant diet of novelty. And don't let moral scruples discourage you from seeking it, even if you find yourself play acting on an Arab slave ship with real slaves destined for a fate worse than most of us can imagine. Don't let that distract you from the great aim of novel sensations, which is all that matters for the modernist mind. And if you understand this, if you're studied in maybe behavioral psychology, this becomes an obvious strategy if you want to manipulate or even blackmail the rich and the powerful. You become a curator of exotic sensations, the kind that even billionaires will find unfamiliar, which really only exists in the range of what would be considered morally unthinkable for the rest of us. But for them, they've journeyed too far and wide to be so provincial in their moral misgivings. And besides, the same standards don't apply to like a Napoleon Bonaparte or an Alexander the Great as they do to the simple people like a Therese of Lisieux or a Mother Teresa. They are among the great and powerful, and to them, nothing should be refused, even by their own moral intuitions.
Well, okay, so I think his point is something like those people are kind of amoral, and therefore they kind of well, just kind of addicted. They're just kind of addicted to novelty, and they have no breaks in terms of what you cannot do when you know that you won't be prosecuted anyway, right? That they don't have proper moral principles at all. And I mean, and it's a hypothesis, yeah, but I'm not sure it's correct. Like I was expecting him to bring up some of the quotes from Epstein files, which would reveal something about his potential views on morality, because then we will have a discussion about it. But he hasn't done it. Like, and I feel like if I were watching this video prepared, I would have done it myself, because it could be that Jeffrey Epstein has his own views on morality, which could have been sophisticated. We see that he was interested in discussions with multiple intellectuals, yet he was not an educated guy, and I feel like he was thinking about these questions a lot. So it just kind of unfair to assume that he didn't have any deep thoughts behind what he was doing. There are some signs of it, that he was ashamed of what he was doing, that it was some sort of, that he hold this kind of standard views on morality that most people kind of hold, and he knew that he was acting immorally and he felt bad about it. For example, when he fired a personnel member from his island. Actually, he didn't fire him. It's like this personal member, he starts suspecting that something terribly wrong is going on. And he said, I'm sorry, Jeffrey, like I knew many years, you treated me well, but I think I could no longer work here in this kind of environment. And he basically left. And Jeffrey Epstein told him something like, you are my only conscience. That yeah, that he's this person, and fear of him, of this kind of, very noble, very honest person, who was just, he was just a gardener. He was just taking care of the garden on Epstein Island. Yeah, that was honest in stopping Jeffrey Epstein from doing even more awful things. That's one moment which kind of, I would say, might support his position. However, I also can recall vaguely uh, some moment which could possibly refute his position, where um, Jeffrey Epstein talks about Christianity in one of his emails, and he explicitly mocks Christian morality, at least some of it. He said something like, it's because you still. I don't remember. Is it a mail to Bill Gates, or I'm not sure. Is it because you or someone else are still following this uh, stupid Christian idea that uh, well, that lives of all people are equally valuable. Mhm. So, and by itself, if you reject that, that doesn't mean you do horrible things. In fact, I agree with Jeffrey Epstein. It's a stupid Christian idea, and it's not true that all mm, people's lives are equally valuable. That would be its insane egalitarianism, where what you're supposed to love strangers as much as you love your friends and your family. That doesn't make any sense. Um, um, so yeah, but it just shows that Jeffrey Epstein was thinking about these questions. Like he thought about what is the proper morality. It is possible that he had one. It's some morality of hedonism. Maybe um, I don't know. It's just hard to guess. I feel like I maybe need to go read some of the releases from Epstein files, but it's hard to navigate myself. So you have to guess, and he just make a kind of bold predictions. Yeah, um, I don't know. Yeah, well, it's interesting hypothesis. Yeah, let's just listen further for the last 4 minutes.
And we're guilty of this too. That's why our appetite for new disclosures, new emails, new photos from Epstein's life are our momentary obsession. We're looking for the new and novel interest because that's all we know to do. We can't imagine logging off, being still, being silent, contemplating the deepest depths of the soul and the lingering questions that might occur to us. Again, it's why we stare at screens for up to 8 hours every single day if you're the average American, because those machines give us a steady stream of sensations and even exotic experiences we couldn't otherwise have. So
I mean, most people have to work for 8 hours with the screen. How else you could do it? Like, I don't understand.
So we may be shocked at the blackened souls of those exposed in the Epstein files, but who's to say that if we weren't given the range of choices to feed our appetites that they are, we might not end up in the exact same place.
Well, the question precisely what kind of views on morality you have, what kind of principles you have. Um, like I understand. Let's consider like a basic question. It's asked all the time. Would you kill a person if you knew that you wouldn't be prosecuted or something like that? And it's a question which I asked myself like when I was young, right? And I started thinking what was the reason for me like not killing anybody, and I just came to the conclusion that there's just no reason for me to kill anybody almost in any situation. It just doesn't benefit me anyhow. And then you might try to come up with general principles out of it. Um, like I guess I don't know whether Epstein like did something similar, all these people.
If we too make our lives an obsessive quest for novel sensations, how are we any different? The only difference is that we haven't been afforded the same temptations that they have, which is why the key thing, if you want to break the spell of modernism that captures most people's souls and interests, is to refuse to feed your appetite for sensations and the novel. Refuse to believe that's all this life is. As Jerry Seinfeld once said, the secret to life is to waste time in ways that you enjoy.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's trying to attack the idea that you should seek novelty. I don't think it's correct. I think this is wrong. It's like I think that's his Christian side starts to show up like that, some sort of, modesty, the virtue of being humble, which I don't agree. Like, why I would seek novelty. It's just a question. Um, what guidance you have in seeking this novelty. Uh, and for me, just I need to think about the long-term consequences for my own life. That's how I would judge about each particular situation. Mm, if you judge well, most likely you wouldn't do drugs, for example, right? Many maybe others like bad things Epstein did or hurt other people, use coercion against other people. Um, so I don't know. I think he just trying to push it in some sort of a religious, Christian or Buddhistic world, restricting our own desires and so on. I'm not sure whether that's correct. Basically, I would say I'm sure it's not correct.
Don't be that person. Don't just enjoy yourself while wasting time. That's how you become a moral monster without ever even noticing, and that's how we end up with an Epstein Island. Instead, be someone who seeks silence, who prays, who contemplates, who is oriented towards the real, the objective, and the transcendental, and most of all, someone who seeks and knows God. Avoid chasing after the next sensational fix.
Well, okay, so I think you could think about the objective and transcendental because, well, it actually affects your life as well. Like it's just, it's like a high hierarchy question. It's not like what I'm gonna do tomorrow and why, but what I'm gonna do, in several years and why. And the higher, the further in time you go in the future to making your predictions and judgments, the higher in this hierarchy of, structures you will have to go. It's like tomorrow, okay, I need to buy food, I need to go to work, but in 3 years, it's not just about food. It's about, do I want to buy a house maybe, or do I need another job, or do I need more education, and why? So why I need this education, not other education? Like I care about what I understand in this life, in this reality. Do I want to study computer science, or I don't want to study computer science? Or I will hope that AI will do it for me, or need to study AI itself, and so on. Yeah, he was of course pushing his idea of God, but for me, God is just useless. Like it doesn't do anything. And so yeah, but I guess that's will be his conclusion.
Or the novel which will never satisfy. We were made for the eternal. Fleeting sensations will never fill that need and only produce addiction and boredom in the end. Avoiding those things is how you avoid being just another tourist in the kind of moral nightmare that people like Jeffrey Epstein are willing to curate in order to exploit everyone that they can. Okay, thanks for watching that. I hope.
Okay, so I think it was a pretty good video. However, I think he should have done more research on an actual Epstein file to make these judgments. Otherwise, he just kind of unverified hypothesis. Um, and I feel like, well, maybe if I'm recording this video, I should be the one doing this research. I just wasn't prepared. It was unprepared reaction. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I partially agree with him to some extent, but I don't think seeking novelty is wrong. It's true that you need to have a long-term goals, which will bring actual meaning to your life and not just everyday pleasure. So in that sense, Epstein was wrong. But overall, that's just fine. And I actually don't know, was Epstein unhappy? Like this little quote to the Guardian kind of reveals the fact that probably, yeah, he was not happy, but we don't know for sure. Like maybe the Epstein file give us the opportunity to look into his life and understand it if you want. Okay, see you next time.